Some ideas are so powerful, they feel like they can shake the very ground we stand on. But what happens when the world tries to bury a truth like that? Today, we're going to talk about an idea that just refused to be silenced, an echo that just got louder and louder the more they tried to quiet it. Just let that sink in for a second. He was punished for proving a fact. This isn't just a random quote. It's the absolute heart of our story. It's about the incredible, almost unbelievable courage it takes to say something the world isn't ready to hear, and the price you might have to pay for it. And that leads us to this really powerful concept. Some truths aren't just new information, they're a threat. They don't just add to what we already know, they actually challenge the foundations of everything people believe in. So let's meet our first key figure, Galileo Galilei. He wasn't just some astronomer. He was a guy driven by this relentless curiosity. In a time when faith was supposed to be the only answer you needed, Galileo just couldn't stop asking questions. And maybe most importantly, he refused to look away from what he found. I mean, he didn't just glance up at the sky, he studied it. And he did it with a tool he built himself, a telescope. And through that little lens, the universe just started spilling its secrets. He saw mountains on the moons zipping around Jupiter, and a truth that was about to turn his entire world upside down. Now, Galileo's fight, it wasn't a one-off thing in history. Not at all. Centuries later, a totally different kind of revolutionary would show up. One who challenged the world not by looking up at the stars, but by looking right into the heart of humanity. Okay, so look at these two monumental ideas side by side. Galileo's scientific truth basically told humanity, hey, you're not the center of the universe. And then you have Martin Luther King Jr.'s moral truth, this incredible dream of equality, which sought to tear down centuries of injustice. Both ideas were huge, and as it turns out, profoundly dangerous to the way things were. So you have to ask, right? Why? Why were these ideas so threatening? Why did people fight back so fiercely? Well, the answer isn't really about the ideas themselves. It's about the power structures they were threatening to completely unravel. And this really gets to the heart of it. The immense courage it takes to stand by a truth when it feels like the whole world is against you. It's one thing to have an idea in your head. It is a whole other thing to speak it out loud, knowing what might happen next. For Galileo, the roadblock was massive. It was the absolute authority of the church. See, his discovery didn't just challenge a scientific theory. It challenged a worldview that had been carefully built and controlled for hundreds of years. To them, it wasn't a discovery, it was a danger. Now, for Martin Luther King Jr., the obstacle wasn't an institution in quite the same way. It was this crushing, heavy, centuries-old system of injustice. He was staring down all of this deeply rooted hate. But he made a conscious and incredibly powerful choice. His weapon wasn't going to be anger or violence. It was going to be a radical, unwavering message of hope. So even though they lived centuries apart, you see these incredible parallels in their journeys. Both of them faced the harshest judgment. But notice that specific choice MLK made. Hope over anger. It's so important. Despite the constant threats to their lives, both he and Galileo had that same essential quality. They simply refused to be silenced. And so, inevitably, the powers that be did what they so often do when they feel threatened by a new idea. They moved in to extinguish the voices carrying them. Galileo was called in, put on trial, and basically given a choice, your truth or your life. And to save his life, he said the words they wanted to hear. He stood there in front of everyone and denied the very truth about the earth that he had proven with his own eyes. For Martin Luther King Jr., the attempt to silence him was absolute. It was brutal, and it was final. Just as his dream was really starting to change the nation, his journey was tragically and violently cut short. They ended his life, thinking they could end his message. But, and this is the most important part of the whole story, that's not where it ends. Because you can put a man in prison, you can even take his life, but you absolutely cannot kill an idea whose time has come. The attempt to silence them, it just created an echo. So how does that happen? How does a silenced idea actually survive? Well, it starts as a whisper. Legend says that as Galileo walked away from his trial, he muttered under his breath, and yet it moves. That whisper, it grows into a following as other people pick up the torch. Then it builds into a full-blown movement, just like the civil rights movement that carried Dr. King's dream forward after he was gone. And eventually, it becomes an undeniable truth. And this right here, this is the ultimate victory. For Galileo, what was once considered heresy, something punishable by the highest authorities, is now just basic fundamental knowledge we teach our kids. And for Dr. King, what started as a dream, spoken in the face of so much hate, ignited a movement for justice that continues to ripple all around the globe. His message wasn't silenced. If anything, it was amplified. I think the ultimate lesson here is about patience and resilience. A true idea, it isn't fragile. It doesn't need to win today's argument to survive. As this says, truth doesn't fear silence. It just waits. It waits for the rest of us to catch up.